Hisan, North Korea. A cold wind sweeps across a dusty public stadium, but it's not the wind that makes the thousands of spectators shiver. It's the silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that feels like a physical weight on your chest. In the center of the field stands a boy. He is 16. His school uniform is wrinkled, his head bowed so low you can only see his trembling shoulders. He isn't a spy. He isn't a political assassin. His crime is much simpler. Yet in this land, it is considered a mortal threat to the state. Found in his pocket, a single plastic USB drive. On that drive, 5 episodes of a South Korean drama. The crowd watches as the guards raise their rifles. There is no jury. There is no appeal. In North Korea, watching a TV show isn't just a hobby. It's a death sentence. I saw them bring him out, remembers Kim Chol-soo, a defector who witnessed a similar public trial. He looked so small. He wasn't crying anymore. He had run out of tears. The official screamed through the megaphone that he had been poisoned by puppet culture. Then the shots rang out. 3 times. 1 for each life the regime says he betrayed. Welcome to a world where a forbidden plot twist can cost you your life. A world where the most dangerous weapon isn't a missile. It's a digital file hidden in a bag of rice. Why is the Kim regime so terrified of a K-drama? And how far will people go to see a world beyond their borders? Today, we go inside the most brutal cultural crackdown in modern history. This is the reality of the law against reactionary ideology and culture. This is why people are dying for a glimpse of freedom. To the rest of the world, it sounds like a bad joke. How can a country that commands a 1,000,000-man army and threatens the world with nuclear fire be terrified of a soap opera? But in the corridors of power in Pyongyang, South Korean dramas are viewed with more fear than a fleet of B-52 bombers. This is the invisible war, a conflict where the front lines aren't drawn in the dirt of the DMZ, but inside the minds of the North Korean people. For 70 years, the Kim dynasty has maintained power through a total monopoly on information. Every radio station, every newspaper, and every classroom textbook repeats the same narrative. North Korea is a powerful, self-reliant paradise, while South Korea is a hellscape of poverty, crime, and American occupation. The regime's survival depends on one absolute condition. The people must believe that there is nowhere else to go and nothing better to have. Then came the digital revolution. In the early 2000s, DVDs and later USB drives began trickling across the border. When a North Korean person watches a K-drama, they aren't just looking at a love story. They're looking at a supermarket shelf stacked with dozens of types of ramen. They see characters talking back to their bosses. They see a world where people travel freely, wear whatever they want, and express emotions that aren't scripted by the state. This exposure creates a devastating psychological shift. The eyes see a vibrant, wealthy South, while the ears hear the state propaganda calling it a wasteland. The grand lie of the regime begins to crack. Kim Jong-un has described this cultural influence as a vicious cancer and vicious weeds that threaten to dissolve the socialist system from within. He understands a fundamental truth. You can control a person's body with hunger and fear, but you cannot control a person who has caught a glimpse of a different reality. This isn't just about entertainment. It's about the erosion of the state's foundation. If the South is successful and free, then the decades of sacrifices demanded by the North Korean regime have been for nothing. A K-drama is a gateway drug to curiosity, and curiosity is the greatest enemy of a totalitarian state. By watching these shows, the North Korean people are committing an act of silent rebellion, slowly stripping away the divine aura of their leaders, one episode at a time. This is why the regime has declared war on culture, because a single USB drive can do more damage to their ideology than 1,000 soldiers. The border between North Korea and China is nearly 900 miles long. It's a jagged line of frozen rivers and steep mountains, heavily fortified with barbed wire and motion sensors. To the regime, it's a wall meant to keep the world out. But to the smugglers, it's a sieve. This is the digital Silk Road, the secret lifeline that brings the outside world into the darkest corners of the North. Smuggling here isn't like a Hollywood movie. There are no high-tech gadgets or secret tunnels. Instead, it's a game of nerves played by desperate people. Most of the contraband enters through the Yalu and Tumen rivers. During the winter, when the water freezes solid, smugglers literally walk across the ice in the dead of night, carrying heavy sacks on their backs. They aren't just carrying food or medicine. Hidden deep inside bags of rice, stitched into the linings of winter coats, or even shoved into the carcasses of frozen poultry, are the real prizes. Thumb-sized USB drives and micro SD cards. 10 years ago, the primary weapon of this cultural war was the DVD, but DVDs were bulky, fragile, and noisy when you tried to hide them. The USB drive changed everything. It's small enough to swallow in an emergency. It's easy to hide in a crack in the wall. And most importantly, one single stick can hold an entire season of a hit K-drama in high definition. But how does a tiny piece of plastic get past thousands of armed guards? The answer is simple: corruption. In North Korea, your salary as a border guard won't even buy you enough corn to survive the week. Cigarettes, liquor, and Chinese yuan are the real currency here. Smugglers pay the guards to look the other way for exactly 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, thousands of hours of forbidden media cross the border. Once across, these USBs travel through a shadow economy known as the Jangmadang, or black markets. They are passed from hand to hand, hidden in the sleeves of jackets, or exchanged during a quick handshake in an alleyway. Each hand that touches the drive is a person risking their life for a profit, or for a glimpse of something real. But bringing the movies into the country is only half the battle. The real danger starts when the drive reaches a home. Because in a land where even your walls have ears, how do you watch a forbidden show without getting caught? Imagine it is midnight in a small apartment in Pyongyang, or a rural hut in Ryanggang. Outside, the streets are pitch black, patrolled by soldiers and neighborhood watch guards. Inside, a family is gathered in the smallest room of the house. They aren't talking, they aren't eating. They are huddled around a small portable device known as a no-tel, a Chinese-made media player that has become the most prized possession in North Korea. Before the play button is even touched, there is a ritual of fear. First, the windows. Curtains aren't enough. They hang heavy winter blankets over every frame to ensure not a single flicker of light escapes to the street. Then, the volume. It is turned down so low that they have to lean in, their ears almost touching the speakers. They breathe in unison, terrified that a sudden cough or a stray laugh might reach the ears of the Inminbon, the local neighborhood monitor who is legally required to spy on their neighbors. For these few hours, the world outside ceases to exist. On the tiny glowing screen, they see a world that feels like science fiction. They watch Crash Landing on You, or Descendants of the Sun. They see people who own cars, people who choose their own partners, and people who can criticize their government without disappearing. To a North Korean viewer, the most shocking thing isn't the high-tech gadgets. It's the way the characters speak to each other with such casual freedom. But this escapism comes with a heart-pounding risk. The regime is clever. One of their most common tactics is to suddenly cut the power to an entire apartment block. When the electricity vanishes, the Notel or the computer shuts down instantly. But there's a trap. The disk or the USB drive remains stuck inside the machine. Within minutes, the 109 units, specialized task forces, burst through the door. They don't need a warrant. They go straight for the electronics. If they find a stuck DVD or a forbidden drive, the entire family's fate is sealed. Even the children are part of this dangerous game. Parents often have to decide, do we let our children watch and risk them accidentally humming a South Korean song at school? Or do we hide it from them, risking that they might innocently report their own parents to the teacher? In North Korea, the living room is a battlefield, and the television is the front line. Every episode watched is a victory for the human spirit, but it's a victory that could end in a labor camp by sunrise. For years, getting caught with a South Korean drama meant a few years in a labor camp, a brutal sentence, but one you could technically survive. But in December 2020, while the rest of the world was focused on the global pandemic, North Korea quietly passed a law that changed the stakes of survival forever. It is officially known as the Anti-Reactionary Thought Law, but to the people on the ground, it is simply known as the Death Law. This wasn't just another set of administrative rules. It was a declaration of total war against foreign influence. Under this legislation, the punishments became draconian, stripping away any last remnants of leniency. If you were caught watching, possessing, or distributing media from hostile nations, specifically South Korea, the United States, or Japan, the mercy is gone. Merely watching a single episode can land you 5 to 15 years in a re-education camp, which is effectively a slow death sentence through starvation and backbreaking labor. But the real terror lies in the distribution clause. Anyone caught smuggling or selling these films now faces the firing squad. What makes Law 2020 truly insidious is the escalation of collective responsibility. In North Korea, you never go down alone. If a child is caught watching a forbidden drama, the parents can be fined, fired from their jobs, or even sent to a labor camp for failing to provide a proper socialist upbringing. If a factory worker is caught, their manager is held responsible. This law creates a culture of universal paranoia, turning every friend, neighbor, and even family member into a potential informant. It forces people to choose between their curiosity and the lives of everyone they love. Why did Kim Jong-un choose 2020 to pull the noose tighter? The pandemic gave the regime the perfect excuse to seal the borders even further, cutting off the flow of information more effectively than ever before. With the country under total lockdown, Kim saw an opportunity to purify the minds of his citizens, hoping to wipe out the capitalist rot once and for all. He recognized that the greatest threat to his authority wasn't a military invasion, but the soft power of a K-pop song or a romantic comedy. By elevating a TV show to a capital crime, the regime admitted its greatest weakness, that their ideology cannot compete with the simple human desire for a better life. The law was designed to kill the dream before it could spread, turning every hidden USB drive into a piece of shrapnel aimed at the heart of the regime. If the law against reactionary ideology is the weapon, then the 109 units are the hand that pulls the trigger. Formed specifically to combat the cultural invasion from the South, this specialized task force is composed of agents from the State Security Department, the Ministry of People's Security, and the Workers' Party. They are not regular police. They are elite hunters of ideas. Their only job is to find the USB drives, the SD cards, and the illegal media players that the regime fears so deeply. The 109 units operate with a level of ruthlessness that keeps entire neighborhoods in a state of constant anxiety. They don't wait for evidence to knock. They rely on surprise and terror. One of their most notorious tactics is the coordinated blackout. In the middle of the night, the 109 units will signal the power station to cut electricity to a specific apartment complex. In North Korea, where power is already scarce, a sudden blackout isn't unusual, but this time, it's a trap. While the electronics are frozen and the forbidden disks, or USBs, are stuck inside the dead machines, the agents burst into the building. They split up, hitting multiple apartments at once so neighbors can't warn each other. They don't just look on the tables. They rip up floorboards, tear open pillows, and check the inside of rice cookers. They are known to feel the back of television sets. If the plastic is warm, they know the family was watching something just moments ago. But these hunters aren't just looking for hardware. They are looking for linguistic evidence. They listen to the way young people speak. Did a girl use the South Korean word oppa instead of the state-mandated go nu nim? Did a boy use slang that only exists in Seoul? If so, they are taken away for interrogation. The 109 units also conduct random checks on mobile phones. They use specialized software to scan for deleted files or hidden folders, and they look for any forbidden hairstyles or clothing choices that suggest a person has been influenced by South Korean fashion. What makes them truly terrifying is that they are incentivized by a quota system. Agents are often rewarded with promotions or extra rations for uncovering a nest of reactionary culture. This creates a culture of aggressive pursuit, where innocence is rarely an excuse. Once the 109 units have you in their sights, the path leads to only one place: the interrogation room, where the silence of the night is replaced by the sounds of a nightmare. The interrogation room in a North Korean detention center is where hope goes to die. It is usually a cramped, windowless concrete box, lit by a single flickering bulb that never turns off. There is no clock on the wall, no sense of time, only the smell of damp earth, old sweat, and cold terror. For those caught by the 109 units, this is where the investigation begins. And in this room, the regime doesn't just want a confession, they want a map. They want to know every link in the chain. Who gave you the USB? How much did you pay? Which neighbors watched it with you? The interrogators use a technique called sleep deprivation as their primary weapon. For days, the prisoner is forced to sit perfectly still on a wooden stool, staring at a wall. If their eyes close for even a second, they are beaten or splashed with ice-cold water. The goal is to break the mind until the prisoner can no longer distinguish between the truth and the lies the guards want to hear. But the most effective tool isn't physical pain, it's psychological leverage. The interrogators know that a North Korean's greatest weakness is their family. They will tell a father that if he doesn't name the person who sold him the K-drama, his daughter will be expelled from university and sent to a coal mine. They tell a teenager that their mother is in the next room, crying because her son is a traitor to the motherland. Under this crushing weight, the social fabric of the community begins to unravel. People start naming friends, cousins, and co-workers just to stop the nightmare for their own loved ones. In these rooms, self-criticism sessions are weaponized. You are forced to write down your crimes over and over again, hundreds of times. You must explain how a romantic comedy from Seoul poisoned your socialist soul. You must curse the actors you once admired and pledge your life to the great leader again. But even a perfect confession rarely leads to freedom. In the eyes of the State Security Department, once you have seen the decadent lifestyle of the South, you are a carrier of a virus. And a virus must be either quarantined in a labor camp or eliminated entirely. The interrogation room is the ultimate filter of the regime. It is designed to ensure that for every one person who watches a drama, 10 more are too terrified to ever try. It turns a simple act of watching TV into a profound trauma, leaving scars that last long after the prisoner leaves the room, if they ever leave at all. In North Korea, there is a specific group of people that the regime watches more closely than any foreign diplomat or military general. They are known as the Jong generation, the millennials and Gen Z of North Korea. Unlike their parents or grandparents, who grew up during the height of the state rationing system and felt a deep, ingrained loyalty to the great leader, this younger generation grew up during the Great Famine of the 1990s. They learned early on that the state wouldn't feed them. Only the Jangmadang, or private black markets, would. Because of this, their loyalty is not to an ideology, but to survival, and increasingly to the forbidden culture they find on smuggled USB drives. To Kim Jong-un, this is a ticking time bomb. The regime knows that if they lose the hearts and minds of the youth, the entire system will eventually collapse from within. This is why the crackdown on K-dramas has become so personal and so specific. It's no longer just about preventing people from knowing the truth about the world. It's about stopping a cultural contagion that is changing the way young North Koreans look, speak, and think. State security agents now patrol the streets looking for non-socialist behavior in the youth. This includes anything that looks even remotely South Korean. Girls are stopped and interrogated for wearing their hair down or using hair clips seen in Seoul dramas. Tight jeans or clothes with Roman lettering are confiscated and destroyed on the spot. But perhaps the most absurd and terrifying focus is on language. In a recent leaked video of a public trial, a group of teenagers was seen being humiliated for using South Korean slang. The regime is particularly obsessed with the word "appa," a term South Korean women use for older brothers or boyfriends. In the North, women are strictly required to use the term comrade or senior. Using "appa" is seen as a sign that your brain has been rotted by puppet culture. To the state, a simple word is a crack in the foundation of their absolute control. These young people are caught in a brutal tug-of-war. On one side is a regime demanding total devotion to a stagnant past. On the other side is the vibrant, colorful, and emotional world they see on their hidden screens. They are the first generation to realize that the paradise they were promised is actually a prison, and their window to the outside world is a 5-centimeter piece of plastic. By targeting the youth, the regime is trying to kill the future of dissent, but in doing so, they are only proving how much they fear the power of a single story. The final stage of North Korea's war on culture doesn't happen in a secret basement. It happens in the bright, unforgiving light of a public stadium or a local airfield. These are not just trials. They are carefully choreographed performances of terror. The regime calls them ideological struggle sessions, and attendance is not optional. Every person in the district, from elementary school children to the elderly, is ordered to attend. They are forced to watch, not out of respect for the law, but to witness exactly what happens when you prioritize a South Korean drama over the state. The atmosphere at these trials is thick with a nauseating dread. Thousands of people stand in a forced, haunting silence as the accused are led out. They are often so weak from weeks of interrogation that they have to be supported by guards. Their heads are shaved, their eyes hollow. A high-ranking official stands behind a megaphone, his voice booming across the crowd, listing the poisonous crimes committed. He doesn't just say they watched a movie. He says they collaborated with the enemy to destroy our socialist paradise. He calls them human scum and traitors to the bloodline. Then comes the moment that shatters the soul of the community. The crowd is often forced to participate in the shaming. People who were once the accused's friends or neighbors are encouraged to stand up and scream insults, to denounce them publicly to save their own skin. It is a calculated move to destroy trust within the village. If you have watched your neighbor die for a USB drive, you will never trust another neighbor again. You will never share a secret, and you will certainly never share a movie. The climax of this horror is the execution itself. In many cases involving the distribution of South Korean media, the sentence is death by firing squad. The accused is tied to a wooden stake. Their mouth is often stuffed with pebbles or cloth to prevent them from shouting any final words of defiance. 9 soldiers are usually assigned to the task, firing 3 rounds each. The sound is deafening, meant to ring in the ears of the spectators for weeks. As the bodies are taken away, the message is clear. The regime would rather kill its own children than allow them to think for themselves. For the people in the crowd, the trauma is the point. They go home in a daze, the colorful images of the K-drama they once loved now, forever stained by the gray smoke of the rifles. After everything we've explored, the brutal labor camps, the specialized hunting units, and the haunting silence of the public execution grounds, one question remains. Why? Why do they keep doing it? Why would a person risk a bullet for a 45-minute episode of a romantic comedy? To understand the answer, you have to understand the fundamental nature of the human spirit. You can starve a body, you can imprison a person, and you can censor a screen, but you cannot kill an idea once it has taken root in the mind. For a North Korean, a K-drama is more than just a TV show. It is proof. It is physical evidence that the reality they have been fed since birth is a lie. It is proof that a world exists where people are the masters of their own destiny, where a mother can buy fruit for her children without a permit, and where a young couple can walk hand in hand without fear. Stories are the most dangerous weapons in the world because they provide a mirror. When a teenager in Hyeosan watches a student in Seoul, they see a version of themselves that could have been. A version that is free, vibrant, and human. This realization is a quiet revolution. Even if they never pick up a weapon, their mind has been liberated. They have crossed the border in their hearts, and once you have tasted that kind of truth, there is no going back to the darkness. This is why the smuggling networks never truly die. For every guard that is bribed, for every USB drive hidden in a bag of coal, the light of the outside world flickers a little brighter inside the north. The regime can pass 1,000 death laws, but they are fighting against a force of nature, the human desire for connection, for truth, and for a better life. As we sit here, with thousands of stories at our fingertips, it's easy to forget how precious this freedom really is. To us, it's just a screen. To them, it's a lifeline. The next time you watch a story, remember those who are willing to die just for a glimpse of it. They remind us that freedom isn't just a political concept. It's the right to imagine a different world. If this journey into the forbidden reality of North Korea moved you, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are committed to bringing you the stories the world tries to hide. And I want to hear from you. If you lived in a world of total silence, what is the one story you would risk everything to see? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice is a privilege. Use it. Thank you for watching.